Hello and welcome to today's video. So this time we're going to be taking a look through my collection of vintage Winston Churchill and Churchill related books. Now a lot of these are hardbacks, a lot of them are very old, and we're going to carefully take a look through these and give them all a good clean. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Okay then, so we'll start off with London to Ladysmith via Pretoria. Now this is the first book I've got by Churchill, and this one was published back in 1900. Quite a scarce one, as you would imagine. Now the first two that we're going to have a look at, I did actually clean these not that long ago. When I say not that long ago, it was before I started this channel, but it's not going to hurt to give them the once over, because see, there's even some more dust coming off there, because I've now got these Churchills pretty much all together on a bookcase, and they really do look great. I would love to be able to get the books that I'm missing. However, Churchill is quite an expensive author to collect, and unfortunately the ones that I'm missing are really expensive. However, I'm delighted with what I've got, and I've got the main stuff, so I'm not too worried. But even so, he's a very collectible author. So I think that's actually done quite a bit of good on the spines there. I said I have actually been through this one with pretty much a fine-tooth comb when I first got it. So he's not too bad with regards like any sort of markings inside, although there were some. So I think we're pretty much okay on that regard, and it is a very delicate book, so I need to be quite careful with it. But there we are. I think that one's fine. It just needed that little bit along the top there, which I think was worth doing. Now the other really early one I've got is this, which is My African Journey. This one came out in 1908, so also very early. And well, Churchill was an MP at the time. He wasn't a reporter anymore. That first one was some of his newspaper reports. And this one, although it's quite a scarce one, I've actually got it fairly cheap. It was from a collector who had sadly passed away, and his daughter was selling it, and I was able to sort of do a best offer, and I got this one for £50, which is actually, although it seems a lot, that was actually quite a good price for this. And this was the last one. I had London to Pretoria many years ago. This one I got about 2 years ago, so yeah, it's not too bad dust-wise. But he's a great author to collect, but he is quite expensive these days, you know. So needs must. But I'm very glad to have what I've got. But that's yes, quite a scarce one, that, and you do see it in all manner of conditions. But that's, you know, it's sort of average, I suppose, you know. So if we're trying to do these in chronological order, the next ones I've got are the First World War. Now this came out as a set of 6 books, and called The World Crisis, and they are all chronological history of the First World War. This, as I said, 6 of them. And I have actually done a dedicated video on these on my main channel, just on this particular run. But I don't remember ever actually cleaning them, so we'll take a little look at that. In fact, I think I might need to bring the camera out just a touch. There we are. Hopefully that's got it in now. The thing about these old ones is you have to be really careful of the boards, so I can't just, you know, put polish on these or anything like that. They're sort of leather, well, not leather bound, but the boards are sort of embossed and are very delicate. So I've got my toothbrush here. I'm just going to sort of run it down the rails where it's likely to pick up any sort of dirt. I'll do that in the back cover as well. But these are, you know, scarce in first edition. These are all first editions that we're seeing today, and also delicate. Now the actual printing of these is weird, because that's really jagged along the bottom, fairly smooth along the top. Thornton Butterworth was the publisher, So quite light along the bottom here. God, look at that coming out. Load, it's almost like it's at the bottom of the spine there. It's almost like wood, isn't it? Wow. Yeah, even the bottom's got a bit of dust on it. Wow, that was much dustier than I ever thought, on all edges. Wow. Blimey. But I mean, that does look miles cleaner than it did. But what a mess. Yes. Wowee. Well, that was the first one. We've got 6 in this series, so yeah. They do take a little bit longer than a paperback, shall we say. And this one's got like little marks and blotches on the front. I think this might be the worst of the 6 that I've got, actually. But I've never sort of gone out to upgrade them. But the set was put together, I think like 1 and 2 were together, 3 and 4 were part of the set. 5 was on its own, and I think I got number 6 on its own as well, because 6 is the tougher one to find, the toughest of them all, because he just sort of went and wrote that sort of as a bit of an afterthought, really. A few people had said, why don't you cover the Russian side of the war, and he did. Yes, lots and lots of dust off the top of these. I said they've never been done. They've probably never been done. This is over 100 years of dust coming off here. Definitely does make a difference, particularly on the top edges there. I mean, that's incredible, really. Now, these numbers 3 and 4 are in much better condition than some of the other ones, so these aren't too bad. In fact, as I recall, yeah, volumes 3 and 4 here, these were review copies. Yeah, publishing date is the 3rd of March 1927. And these were from, that was a little note from the publisher there. The published price is 42 shillings net. And this covers, volumes 3 and volumes 4, 1916 to 18. So that's what these are. They look already, although there's dust on that, they're just better condition than the first 2 that we've seen here. But hold it away and brush it down there. Yeah, there's not so much coming off these. It's all right. has made a big difference. It really has. Just the old job, this. Right. This is volume 4. So, as I said, 3 and 4 were released, published simultaneously. So these came as a pair. So these are very, very similar. Really, it's just volumes 1 and 2 of these that are a little bit ropey, my copies. But they're absolutely fine to have in my collection. Certainly not a bad read, but I think his history of the Second World War is perhaps the pinnacle of his writing. Fantastic. And we've got a few editions of that to look at today. Banging the camera there. Sorry about that. Unbelievable amounts of dust coming off these. You could say this dust is hundreds of years old. Well, 100 years old. Wow. Okay. This is volume 5, which was supposed to be the final volume until under pressure he decided to write the Russian one, probably, and these also sold very well. So you can sort of see on the boards here, there's a little bit of like, I wouldn't say it's mould because it's not, the book's bone dry, it's got contemporary reviewing, but a little bit of sort of spotting on that. And, you know, I've heard different ways that people saying you can get this off. Some people have said a tiny little bit of like Vaseline rubbed in and then wiped off can pull off some of this, but it's not something I've ever tried, and I don't think I'll be trying it on this particular series of books. They're just too expensive. However, I might find something to try on down the line, that little technique. I know inside these are absolutely fine, because when I first got them I did check them inside, and I know these are nice copies. March 1929, that one. And then the final one, and apparently this one is worth sort of as much as the rest of them put together, is volume 6, because it was one which, I don't know if it just didn't sell well or if it didn't have a very high print one. Honestly, I really don't know, but I've got a copy of it, which is all that matters, and it's a pretty nice copy at that as well. But I remember I got this for £90, which at the time, even at the time, was a good price. It usually goes for about £2.50, I think, so I was pleased to get this one. Now, I won't just do all the hardbacks one after the other because it will get a bit boring. I have got some Churchill-related paperbacks and some books about Churchill, including some biography volumes. So I'll mix it up a little bit so it keeps it interesting. Although we've got one last one on the First World War, and this is this one here. This is like the one volume edition. Even this has got quite scarce, but I got quite lucky with this one. So I only got it for a tenner. So I'm going to take off the dust wrapper, which I've protected, so that we can give it a proper brush without risk of damaging that one. And it was funny, when I did my video on the First World War, I've had maybe 2 or 3 people message me about this book rather than the first, saying, oh, you know, I actually don't have that one, you know, would you mind selling it to me? So I think it's quite scarce, but as I said, I was really lucky and got it cheap for just a tenner. And it's a great way to read. If you haven't got time to read all 6 right through, this is a good way of doing it. Sorry, I think I banged the camera yet again there. I haven't got quite as much space as I normally have today because the table is so full of books. So I'm a little bit bunched up today. Let's see. I just spotted that. That was like a couple of turned over corners there, which we don't want that, do we? Absolutely not, I hear you cry. Now, I always read the comments on these videos, and the last couple of weeks has been, one of my viewers has said he likes to listen to these videos whilst he's driving. So it's not for the audio side of it. Sorry, not for the visual side, it's for the audio side. And I thought, well, that's a bit unusual, but I think he just likes the commentary. So there you go. So taking a little break from the hardbacks, I'll do just a few paperbacks. I've got a couple of modern ones here, which we'll get those done first. So these just need a brush, but it's Max Hastings. He's definitely one of my favourite historians, and I've got quite a few books by him. He went back to the Falklands, but this one's actually a really nice unread one. And it's Churchill as warlord. So Churchill, when he was war prime minister, 1940 to 1945. Would we have won the war without him? I don't know. And here's another one, which is Churchill by Roy Jenkins. This one, biography of the year, 2003. I've heard this one's absolutely fantastic as well. But you know, the thing is, the ultimate biography of Churchill is, of course, by Martin Gilbert, and his is a multi-volume, of which sadly I've only got the first 2. I'm thinking about getting the other volumes of it, but they take a lot of room, and I don't know if I'd have the chance to read them all like that. Now this is quite nice. This is quite an unusual paperback. Churchill in War and Peace, Emery's Hughes. It's got a cartoon on the front by Lowe, 2 and 6. It looks like a Hutchinson paperback, but I don't know if it actually is. Printed at the Blackfriars Press. Oh, it came out in 1950. There we are. It looks older than that, doesn't it? I see it's got some writing inside, so we'll get that with our trusty rubber here. Obviously, I've got lots of other Churchill paperbacks within other collections. There's a couple in Penguin. There's 2 or 3 in Pan, by Churchill, on Churchill, and by his wife. There's at least 2 or 3 in Foursquare, but those are in those respective collections. So I haven't gone through and pulled out my entire Churchill collection, but these are the books that I shelve separately. These are the Churchill books that are just sort of on their own, as it were. So let's give that one there once over. Yeah, quite a nice little paperback, that one. Right, continuing on then, I've got a couple of volumes of the hardback biography. Now, the first few were written by Randolph Churchill, who was Churchill's grandson. And then they were taken over by Martin Gilbert. And the first sort of 6 are almost definitive, but there's so many extra volumes beyond that. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how many. I think there might even be as many as 30. So, but as you can see, these are very, very dusty. They're quite easy to get, but not that easy to find in nice condition. I have to admit, I've not actually read these, which is why I've not avidly sought anything beyond the first couple. But I have spoken to a couple of collectors who read them all, and they said it is just incredible. And the reason they're able to do this is because Churchill himself saved everything. So all his documents, notes, everything when he was Prime Minister, every little memo, every scrap of paper that went through his hands, letters, everything was saved. And consequently, he had an incredible archive that he could pull on when he retired from public life, basically, after the Second World War. I know he came back as PM again a little bit later, but after that, finally, he got his war memoirs down on paper, and they had this massive archive that they could pull on. But it wasn't a small feat by any means, and he had a whole team of people giving him a hand. But basically, these books in incredible detail. So that first one there is just the first 26 years of his life. This is leading up to the events of the First World War. And then they're very, very detailed after that, literally a year or two per book, detailing his life. And, well, what a life it was, really, wasn't it? It's no surprise he was voted Man of the Century last year, because he certainly was a very, very prominent British leader, and regardless of what you think of his politics, he certainly led the British through World War II, and without him I think it would have been a very different story. But these were a little dusty, to say the least. I just bought these off eBay. They weren't especially expensive, but because of their weight, it's the postage that can really add up on these ones. But as you can see, beautifully produced. A lot of time and effort went into these. It really was. In 1967, this first one, or the second one rather. Look at that. Yeah. So possibly a series I would love to finish up. I think there's to just do his life story. There's about 8 main volumes. But if you want to go into all the minute detail, all his letters and everything else, all the supplementary volumes, I think you're looking at maybe over 30 books, possibly even more than that. Right, let's. I actually got this one fairly recently, so it shouldn't be too bad. Got this one last year in Hay&Y with my friend Steve, and I got it from Richard Booth. What an excellent shop that was, second hand and new actually bookshop. The Churchill Legend. There were a lot of books about Churchill, particularly published once he'd passed away, and this is one such book. It's got a bit of pencil inside. So I've had to, I used to have loads more, in fact, but I actually moved a lot of my Churchill stuff on years ago because I just didn't have the room for it. A few bits I really, really regret selling. One of them was the Churchill bubblegum cards, if you can believe it. But it wasn't the cards per se, because the card set is pretty easy to get. But I actually had the shop display box, which with 4 unopened packets. That really was a Churchill rarity, and yeah, I do regret getting rid of that one. Now this one here is just my reading copy, so obviously I collect Penguin books, but I've got a really, really immaculate copy of this one. In fact, one that I picked up a nice copy of fairly recently. But this is just my sort of reading one, and in all honesty, I have been rereading the Second World War history, but I've been rereading it in this series, which we're going to have a look at in a minute. This is the Second World War history called the Chartwell edition. So I don't think I'm ever going to be reading this one again. However, it is one of the very earliest Penguin books I picked up before I even collected Penguin books. So I've had it for decades, and I think for that reason alone, I think I ought to keep it. But I had no idea it was actually this tatty. But this was the very first Churchill book, this exact copy, that I read. And I was always surprised. I need some glue here. I was always surprised that Penguin never went on and published the other 5 volumes in the series. But I believe what happened was Penguin published this one in 1956, and it was part of their 21st, Penguin's 21st birthday celebrations. So they just did it as like a one-off special. It was actually Glance who published the Second World War history in paperback, and Ballantine in the States. And I've not got that paperback series. They broke the big thick books into 12, so each book had 2 volumes, and that wasn't a bad way to do it. But for some reason, I've always, once I'd read this one, I thought I've got to track down the rest of the series because it's such a readable book. Yeah, I've always read them in hardback since then. So there you go. Right, so this is volume 1 of the Second World War. So we saw it in paperback just then. This was the very first printing of it, the popular trade edition in hardbacks. This is how they very first appeared in the UK. Now, this is probably the 3rd set of these that I've had through my hands. And they're very, very difficult to find in nice condition. So I bought this set fairly recently, probably in the last 5 years. And I was particularly after a set which had as good a spine as possible, because the red on the spine is notorious for fading. But these aren't bad. They're not perfect by any means, but by far the greatest condition set that I've ever owned. And they are very, very nice. I'm very pleased to have these in first printings. And they are, as I said, quite scarce in the original printings. There we are, 1948. So, yeah, so when Churchill... I'm just going to take these off while I give them a brush. When Churchill got down to writing these, he had to rely on a team to make sure everything was pulled together correctly. And you can imagine the sort of job that he had on his hands. But if there was anyone who was going to do it, you have to say, Churchill was the man. And let's not forget, the other main players were all dead. Stalin was dead. Roosevelt was dead. Churchill was really the only one left who could put his thoughts down on paper, which is what he did. And it really was it's a proper chronology of the war. But this first volume here, in all honesty, because it starts in the 1930s, Churchill's not in power. He's an MP, but he's not in power. And Churchill spends most of that first volume saying, I told you so. Basically saying, look, I'm warning you, Germany's arming up. We need to be doing something. And of course, the British politicians at the time just didn't want to believe that we were heading for another war. And obviously we were. So they sort of buried their heads in the sand a little bit. And Churchill, of course, was proved to be absolutely spot on with his thoughts about Hitler. So it's quite interesting. At the start of the first one there, Churchill visits Europe, and he has the opportunity to actually meet Hitler. They're in the same hotel, and word, I think, goes out to say, yeah, I think word got to Churchill to say, look, would you be willing to meet him? And he said, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll meet him over lunch or something like that. But for some reason, it never actually happened. And after that was it. They were sort of mortal enemies. And of course, they never actually met during the course of the Second World War at all. But they were, at least at one point, in the same hotel together. Little mark on the front there, which I don't believe I can do anything about. These aren't actually too bad. I've got to say, I looked a long time to find a nice set of these. But you can actually find a set of Churchill's Second World War if you want them in hardback, which I think is a really, really great way to read these ones for less than £100. So if you're willing to bear the brunt of that, because if you buy them brand new in the UK, the books are £15 in paperback anyway. So you're looking at, what's that, 90 quid to buy a set in paperback. So you're better off, I believe, spending similar sort of money, maybe £120, £130 will get you a really nice set of these hardbacks, the same as what I've got here. But in a minute you may think, actually, I'm going to get this set instead, because there's a second set that was released, which is, I think, even better than these. As I said, this is a set of the first editions, and this is because I like to collect Churchill firsts. But the books later on, as they were getting reprinted, new things came to light, and Churchill himself was pulled up on a couple of bits and pieces about it, because you've probably heard the expression that the history books are written by the winners. And there's a little bit of that in here, and plus also, he didn't really criticise himself much, so it's difficult to have a completely objective view written by someone who was on the winning side, as it were, so there's a little bit of that in there, as you would expect, but he's not going to deliberately drum himself down, and there's nothing taking away his achievements, so even so, there's a few corrections in the later editions, shall we say. I'm glad these came already wrapped. I didn't have to wrap them myself. When you find these, you'll notice that the boards are particularly susceptible to like mottling, so they really do need to be kept in a very, very temperature controlled environment, so not too cold and not too hot, because these particular boards are notorious for it for some reason. I don't know why, but you'll see many, many copies online where the books are really mottled and a bit mouldy, so try and steer clear of those if you can. And the other key thing to look out for, of course, is the names of the books on the spine to be as unfaded as possible. You can see all of mine are faded, but these are by far the best ones I think I've still ever seen. There are pristine ones that have never seen the light of day, that are in existence, but they go for many, many times a premium, and you'd end up paying quite a lot for those. Here's the very last one, number 6 here, Triumph and Tragedy. When did this last one get published? Because the first one was 1948. 54, look at that. So basically one a year. It'll take you that long to read it. Now, I remember when these books first came out, well, not when they first came out, but when I first read them, I was in my 20s, and I got so engrossed in it, I'd be reading at least 50 pages a night before going to bed, or before going to sleep, I should say, and I absolutely flew through them, and I couldn't get over how readable they are. And I'll just give you a little example. I'll turn at random to this. So the reason they're so readable, and why Churchill is so readable, is that at the start of a chapter here, the Polish dispute. So it's like each book is like a series of essays, or each chapter is like a series of essays. So this is like, there's 20 different sort of subheadings, each looking at different things at different times. And it's in very, very convenient little segments. So that's actually one of the slightly longer ones there. But there's lots of points where you can just pause. They've got the dots there. So you could read a few pages, and it's very easy mid-chapter to just pause. And there we are. That was that entire chapter. And take a break. So the books are eminently readable, even though they're massive, massive tomes. The way that the actual chapters are broken down, I think, is excellent. So that was the original 6 volumes cleaned up, and then they did publish a 1-volume edition, which is this massive one here. And once again, I only got this one recently. It turned up in a job lot, which I got the whole lot of books for a tenner. So I mean, this one, when it's in really nice nick, goes for about that on its own. So I did actually give it a clean when I got it, so I think it's absolutely fine. Just giving it that extra little once over there. one's actually fine because it was one that I got fairly recently. But that's a good way to read it if you haven't got the time for all 6 books. That's the abridged version, and it's not a bad read at all. Now, the versions that I'm currently, because I always have this one on the go pretty much all the time. So this is the version I'm reading right now. Now this is all 6 books again, and this is called the Chartwell edition. So this is almost like a deluxe one in the red cloth. Once again, quite difficult to find because it's red without a faded spine, and you can see mine are fairly faded. But this was slightly larger than the normal hardbacks, and it's almost like a deluxe edition. And these came out. Yes, it's a bit of a cash in by Churchill, but they were Chartwell. Chartwell, of course, was Churchill's home. But they are, I feel, the best editions that you can read. The best editions of these that were ever printed. So it's the full books. However, all the corrections that were made in the subsequent volumes, all the changes that he made, are now in place. So any things that were proved to be factually inaccurate have been changed. So in actual fact, this and subsequent editions are the best versions to read, not the first editions. However, if you want a vintage edition, this is the one I think to read, and this is the ones that I read. Even though they're massive, I've been absolutely loving going through these particular. In fact, there I am. I'm up to there at the moment. And as I said, lots of, you see how the chapters are broken down. So if you're starting to get tired or something, just pop your bookmark in. Nothing to worry about. And because it's historical, you know exactly, if you've read these before, if you know your Second World War history, you can just pick up at any time. So I've always pretty much got this series of books on the go because I really do love them. Lots more illustrations and photographs than the originals. As I said, it's the ultimate edition of this Second World War history, in my opinion. And once again, all 6 books came out in the original volumes, and these just need, I've had these for a long time, a bit of a polish. But I got to admit, I haven't looked these up for many years, so I've got no idea what the set would set you back. I bought mine over a decade ago, and it cost me over over 100 rather, and that was at least 10 years ago. So I would imagine they've probably gone up a bit since then, because these are, as I said, great books. I'm not sure how you actually bought them, because I don't believe they were for sale in bookshops. I think you had to buy them through the post. But even so, a great set, this one, and I think personally this is the ultimate way to read Churchill's Second World War history, is in this format. I think they're lovely, and these are surprisingly not too dusty. I have a feeling, I keep banging the camera because these are big books, I have a feeling it's because mine are actually stored sideways on. They're so big, they're just in a big pile, almost acting a bit like a bookend. Let me pause there. I'm going to see if I can change the camera so I don't keep banging it. I don't know if that's going to make it much better, but hopefully a little bit better. I've got a bit more room, and of course I've cleared a bit of the desk now. So this is volume 4. This is the biggest volume in the series, and just incredible. Going through these today has really made me want to get stuck back into these again. They all got fold-out maps and stuff. This is an example of how sort of lavish these books would be with the fold-out maps. Bit of dust mottling on the top of that one. But yeah, I think the Chartwell editions are great and recommended. I do seem to remember when I first collected Churchill back in, over 30 years ago, I seem to remember having the Chartwell edition for the First World War, which once again was done in 6 volumes. That they were sort of, I believe, like leather-bound ones, you know. And this one's volume 5. Look, this has got something on the boards here, which is like being dropped or something, which is not great. But as I said, I don't mind, because in a lot of cases, I've got these Churchill, it's the content that I love. Yeah, he's good fun to collect, but if you enjoy the content as well, you're onto a winner, aren't you? And I think that's the whole thing about collecting. Collect what you love, and you won't go far wrong. Let's do the last of the Chartwells. We've got a whole pile of more miscellaneous stuff. This one's got some, sadly got some cobwebs on the top edge there. I said I've never actually done these, but I'm surprised they're actually in pretty nice condition. So they've not needed masses like the First World War, which really were very dusty, weren't they? Lovely. Right, so that's the main works done, but now we got an all manner of sort of more miscellaneous Churchill titles to do, so let's dig those out now. Right, so these are just my sort of bits and pieces really on Churchill, and this is a far more modern one by the look of it, Macmillan Press. Yeah, 2000. This is just one that's sort of come my way. A lot of these, you know, possibly appeared in the various job lots I picked up over the years. Now this is unusual. Mr. Churchill in 1940. It's in a dust wrapper. Now it's fairly old. Oh, it's got a mark inside. 1964 first, it says. It's a very, very thin little book. It's only 30 odd pages. And this really was one of those like endless cash-in books that were published. This essay originally appeared in 1949 as a review of the first volume of Sir Winston Churchill's war memoirs. Ah, there we are. It's just like a little companion. Let's get that top brushed off. And some of these, like Churchill-related books, can be quite collectible, but I don't think I've got any really mega valuable like that. Certainly a few of interest, but nothing mega money, I don't think. Yeah, I don't know, look how thin it is. It's the thinnest hardback I've ever owned. It barely warrants a dust wrapper, but I must, I'll get that pencil mark out. So there's one right down the bottom here. Looks a bit like an anchor. So we get that one out. And we get this old bookseller's inventory out as well. No idea where this one came from. I do vaguely remember buying a little batch of Churchill books, and it was books about Churchill but none actually by him, and I think it may have come from that, you know, but in all honesty I really can't remember. I can't imagine it's, you know, expensive or anything, but you never can tell. What's this then? Winston Churchill V.G. Drakowski. Don't know anything about this one. It's a Progress Publishers in Moscow. How unusual. 1978. Wow. Not one I can even remember. This must have been in that sort of batch of like old Churchill books I got off eBay or somewhere. I just can't remember quite where I got them. A bit unusual to see that in Russian. Yeah, very unusual. Once again, unlikely it's worth big money or anything like that. It's just a related Churchill tome. Here's another one here. So this is Former Naval Person, Winston Churchill and the Royal Navy. This is by Cassell. So they're a bit more of a noted military publisher, so we say. 50 shillings this was. That seems a lot of money. Wow. Very, very bright blue, isn't it? Let's look at the printing history on this one. 1968. Okay, well, there you go. Churchill, of course, was first Lord of the Admiralty, as well as being Prime Minister. It's one of his other roles that he did. I think was respected within the Admiralty as well, from what I understand. Okay, now this is one of the things I've not got back since I got rid of my Churchill collection, and that's his volumes of speeches. This is the final one, the secret session speeches. But I had them all. I didn't have them all in dust wrapper though, I had them all loose. But they are around, and I mean, Churchill himself was such a great orator, perhaps one of the best ever. I would like to get this back. I would like to get this set back if I could. So I might keep a little eye out for his speeches. 1946. That is a first. This is a great book. This is by Martin Gilbert. Now, Martin Gilbert ended up doing all the definitive Churchill sort of biographies, and this is the photographic portrait. And there's some great photographs in here. A lot of them you've sort of seen before, but there's also a nice batch of unseen stuff. So I think they're great. Let's see, really nice illustrated book on Churchill right through the years. This is his first book, The River War. Rather expensive. Right, so that's fine. I'll just give the edges a bit of a rub. But I hope you've enjoyed looking through this. Something a bit different today. Churchill the painter. There we are. A huge collection of Churchill's paintings went on sale. When was it? It was less than a year ago. And the thing was, there were so many that hit the market, and I'm talking like 200 or 300 Churchill paintings, that they didn't go for a fortune. And I'm kicking myself that I didn't splash out a couple of £100 and actually get one. But the main thing about them is they're not actually that good. Unfortunately, Churchill's style was not the greatest. I don't think. I think they were very, he was self-taught. He was a famous amateur, shall we say? So it wasn't the sort of thing I could buy and then hang on the wall. Even though a lot of people said at the time it was the cheapest way to own Churchill's signature. And it be a guaranteed genuine one was because they were all, on the whole, they were signed, but they were signed in paintbrush. But Churchill did actually have a book published in Penguin called Painting as a Pastime, where he does sort of, his great hobbies when he wasn't running the country was painting and bricklaying. He used to like to bricklay for fun. Right, this is another, this is really niche, isn't it? The medallic portraits of Sir Winston Churchill. This is Churchill appearing on coins and medals and things like that. So one for the numismatists, published by Spink, who are famous for old coins. And once again, these all came as part of this slightly bizarre job lot, and a lot of them have got this same code number inside. So it was evidently a real Churchill collectible, and I remember getting these, and they were really cheap. It's funny because they've all been laminated as well. They've been looked after, but yeah, Churchill in coins in that. Who'd have thought it, eh? But it's just an idea, or it gives you an idea rather of just how popular Churchill was. Just incredible. And there literally are hundreds and hundreds of books written about him, as well as he himself having wrote, how many did he write? About 60 tomes. As I said, the war memoirs are the top ones. He did History of the British English-speaking people is another great series, although I've not got those in hardback anymore. I used to have them. And that was his last sort of great work, I suppose. There we are. Right. A couple more to do here. So we've got Churchill, The Wilderness Years, once again by Martin Gilbert, in association with the ITV series. So this is his years between the wars. That's Robert Hardy playing Churchill there in the TV version. This is basically the run-up to the start of the Second World War. HBO did a series with Albert Finney playing Churchill, which I believe is better. So, but yeah, The Wilderness Years. But ultimately, boy, was he ever proved right. So when did this one get published? 1981. And once again by Martin Gilbert, arguably the world's greatest expert on Churchill, who himself sadly passed away, I believe, a year or two ago, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't think anyone studied Churchill as much as that man. And his biographies are just incredible. It's got a little hair inside the dust wrapper there, which we do not want. Right, sadly, but also slightly amazingly, I can make a bit more of it, is our last one here, which is Winston Churchill, Tributes Broadcast by the BBC. This is a huge tome, this one, published by the BBC. I don't remember this one at all. Once again, it's got that code number, A298. I wonder if that was like a lot number, a book lot number, and someone bought this Churchill collection at auction. I mean, as I said, I know I bought them at auction, but I think I was looking for one or two particular books, and this one sort of came my way, or this lot came my way. But this is actually a fairly interesting tome, this. So let's get rid of that ribbon. It's more like an annual, isn't it, I think? We'll take off the dust wrapper so we can give it a proper clean. Yeah. Sometimes people forget that the BBC had their own publishing arm, and extensive it was too. This is all BBC broadcast on the World Service and things like that. Oh, look at that, that's interesting. So I guess the recordings still existed, so they put them into book form. And once again, this is just a reflection of just how popular Churchill was. 1965, yeah. All of these around the sort of time Churchill passed away. That's really nice, that. Oh, better give the old edges a clean. That's actually one of the better ones, that probably is quite scarce, I don't know. I've got no idea what these are worth. They're not worth anything to me monetary wise. They're just, I've got them in my collection just because I love them. Simple as that. Right, well, as I put this dust wrapper back on, I hope you've enjoyed something a little bit different this time. A look at my Winston Churchill collection. As I said, that's pretty much everything except the books that are part of the main publisher's run. So, like, there's a few in Pan, there's a few in Foursquare. I've got a couple of Fontana books about Churchill. So if I ever do like a detailed analysis on my main channel, I'll make sure I pull all those other related books out from those other publishers as well, and that's probably in itself probably another 20 or so plus books, so it'll make one incredible video. So I will do that at some point, but at least these are all looking tip-top. So thank you very much for watching today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Next week I believe we're going to be doing my last batch of Puffin storybooks, which should be right through to the end, and if there's not that many, I'm going to pull out the Puffin picture books as well. So once again, something a bit more unusual for us to have a look at. Anyway, thank you very much for watching today. If you've not already, do please hit that subscribe button, and do leave a comment if you've enjoyed today's video, and I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.